What's going on, guys? MOniz here, and today we have another camera comparison. We got the Huawei Mate 20 Pro and the iPhone XS. 3 cameras versus 2. Which one does it better? Let's find out. The first shot is in London, England. This is a traditional red phone booth. Both cameras did a fantastic job, but the biggest difference is that the Mate 20 Pro over-sharpens the image, making it look a lot more appealing. If you look at the ground, it's a lot sharper. You can see those details better. However, the whites are a little bit too high on the Mate 20 Pro, especially when you compare it to the iPhone XS. If you look at the side of the building, you can actually see the brown variations a little bit more clearly on the XS compared to the Mate 20 Pro. The back of the phone booth towards the building where you see the Bennett logo, you can actually read it better with the Mate 20 Pro, whereas on the iPhone XS, it starts to blur out a little bit. So in the next shot, again, we have the same sort of situation. With the Mate 20 Pro, you're getting more of a sharper image, you're getting more detail in the distance because it's able to utilize the 40 megapixel sensor, and you're getting a slightly more contrasty photo. Also, if you notice, if you look at the sky, the middle crane is visible on the Mate 20 Pro where you can barely see it on the iPhone XS. Same with the building all the way in the background. All those windows, the lines going through them are a lot cleaner on the Mate 20 Pro. The next shot is a macro shot, and the Mate 20 Pro can get up to 2.5 centimeters to the subject. However, I'm gonna give the slight edge to the iPhone XS in this one. The Mate 20 Pro definitely looks a lot sharper. If you look at the nose, it's a lot more contrasty, slightly more natural compared to the iPhone XS, but the iPhone XS did a much better job with the details. If you look at the side of the cheeks, you can actually see the brown portion of it, where on the 20 Pro, it's kind of washed out. Also, the XS was smart enough to get the entire face in focus, whereas on the 20 Pro, if you look at the top of the head, just below the neck, it starts blurring out the background. So now we're indoors, and as you can see here, same sort of situation. The iPhone XS is definitely leaning more towards a warmer tone. The 20 Pro is sharpening up the image. It's giving it more a vibrant and appealing look, but yet it still kind of remains slightly more natural. Now in this photo, we're still indoors, but we have light sources from different directions. I wanted to see which phone would do a better job with exposure, but based on the 5 or 6 pictures I took with both devices, they look pretty much exactly the same. Again, the only difference is you're getting a slightly more warmer tone with the iPhone XS, but you're getting a clearer and more sharper picture with the Mate 20 Pro. Now for the heck of it, I decided to turn on night mode with the Mate 20 Pro, and this is exactly what happened. It did a much better job with the shadows. It brings out more detail. If you look at the sky, there's more dynamic range. And if you look at all the way down at the end of the hallway, you can see the outside, where on the XS, it's slightly more blown out. So next up, we have another close shot of some flowers. Again, same sort of situation. Higher contrast on the Mate 20 Pro, but again, you get a more warmer tone on the iPhone XS. I don't think any phone is doing it better. It really depends, again, if you like a softer image or if you want one that has a little bit more over sharpening. So this photo was super interesting because I wanted to see how these phones would handle dynamic range. Right off the bat, the iPhone XS did a much better job, and you can tell that by looking at the opposite end of the tunnel. If you look at the opposite end of the tunnel on the iPhone XS, you can actually see the buildings, whereas on the Mate 20 Pro, it's completely blown out. The iPhone XS just did a much better job with exposure. Now it's time to talk about portrait mode, and before I show you the portrait picture, this is what it looks like without portrait mode on. They both look great. Again, the warmer tones on the iPhone XS, slightly sharper on the Mate 20 Pro. You do get more of a natural photo, like in terms of what daylight represented on that day with the Mate 20 Pro, whereas on the iPhone XS, it's trying to lean more towards warmer tones to make the photo a little bit more pleasing. Now, as you can see, the background of the Mate 20 Pro is slightly more blurred, so it's using the lenses appropriately, whereas on the background with the iPhone XS, it's a little bit blurred, but not nearly as much as the Mate 20 Pro. So again, exact same photo, but this time we have the portrait effect happening. We can see a lot more detail on the face of this object with the Mate 20 Pro. Also, I like the blur of the background better. It's a little bit more stronger on the iPhone XS, but if you look at the ears of the object, you can see it sort of clipping there, and it's taking away from the ear itself, whereas on the Mate 20 Pro, it did a better job of selecting the object. Now it's time to talk about nighttime photos, and things kind of take an interesting toll. The Mate 20 Pro, this is a regular photo. I'm not using nighttime mode here. And as you can see, it's really cranking up that ISO to bring light into the picture. I think I look great. It did a pretty good job. If you look at the iPhone XS, instead of cranking up the ISO as much as the Mate 20 Pro, what you're getting is a little bit of over sharpening and smoothening to reduce the amount of ISO it has to use. The one thing I don't like about the iPhone XS though is the way it's handling the light source on my face. This is a tungsten light, and what the iPhone is doing is changing the Kelvin of the light to make it look more appealing. Now here's the exact same photo, but this time I decided to turn on in night mode with the Mate 20 Pro. And as you can see, there is a huge difference. I'm a lot clearer, there's less ISO, so it's not as noisy. It just looks like a really great photo. This is another nighttime photo without a human subject. And as you can see, the Mate 20 Pro is doing the exact same thing, really cranking up that ISO to bring light into the photo. The picture itself is definitely brighter than the iPhone XS. But with that, you do get some overexposed lights on the right-hand side of the picture. So again, exact same photo, but this time I turned on night mode to see the differences. It didn't do that great of a job, but you do again get a less noisy photo, and this time it exposed that light source correctly. Moving on to the front-facing camera, this is something Huawei phones have never been good at. Their front-facing cameras just never have been that great. And as you can see here, the iPhone definitely does a better job. The skin looks better, my head size looks better, it just looks a lot more appealing. They have reduced the amount of beauty mode going on with the Mate 20 Pro. This is down at 0, so it's not as bad. In fact, it's actually a little bit more natural than the iPhone XS, whereas all that noise reduction is being incorporated into the photo. So again, exact same photos, but this time we turned on portrait mode. And as you can see here, again, the iPhone XS just did a much better job. The background of the Mate 20 Pro just looks so fake. And for whatever reason, it decided to completely darken my skin, making me look like I have a tan. So again, I'm gonna give this round to the iPhone XS. So right now we have the front-facing camera on. Based on my first experience, it looks like the iPhone's probably better, but you guys let me know in the comments below. Huawei's always suffered from a really poor front-facing camera. And finally, we have 4K video, and Huawei has decided to let optical image stabilization work. This was a big issue with the P20 Pro, but it's here on the Mate 20 Pro. Now, is it better, the stabilization better than the iPhone XS? I don't think so. It's pretty close, but there's a little bit of warping going on when I'm walking with the Mate 20 Pro. And also the video itself, it's pretty good, but it's still not as good as the 4K video on the iPhone XS. So that pretty much wraps up this camera comparison between the Mate 20 Pro and the iPhone XS. Other things you get with the Mate 20 Pro is the ability to take wide angle selfies, and the telephoto lens can zoom in up to 3 or 5 times, which is another great feature. Now, I'll be honest with you. If it came down to only one phone in my pocket, it'd be tough because the iPhone definitely has the better video and the better front-facing camera, but when it comes to like daytime photos and nighttime photos, the Mate 20 Pro usually takes the edge. It has slightly contrastier pictures, it's a little bit sharper, and you have the ability of using those various lenses. Anyways, that wraps up this camera comparison. I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say in the comments below. Did you like the Mate 20 Pro better, or did you like the iPhone XS better? Hit me up on Discord if you have any questions. Like the video if you liked it. Follow me on Instagram for some behind the scenes. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next video.